Hello everybody, it's the 21st of February and well, believe it or not, today I'm going to repot my first tree of the year, being this Dawn Redwood, which as you can see I'd already identified it with the red tag as a candidate for repotting this year. I'm going to move you in a bit closer and then you'll be able to see that the buds are already well swollen on this, well, both of them, my Dawn Redwoods. It's always hard on the small screen on the camera to see how well things are showing up, but I think you can see that the buds are swollen almost to the point of bursting. Apologies, Storm Franklin is still swirling its way through here, so I hope that's not affecting the audio too much. I thought the wind had died down, and then as soon as I came out and got the camera out and everything together to do this, the wind seems to have got up again, but I'm going to carry on regardless, and hopefully it won't spoil the video too much. Although the Dawn Redwoods are pushing their leaf and swelling buds, they've got nothing on my Hawthorn twins here, which have they've already leafed out. At least in part. Some of the buds at the top are still swelling, but some of these down here are still a proper open, so it won't be long before this tree is in leaf. It's going to need a bit of a chop back before then, but I'm not going to repot this tree this year, so there's plenty of time. So this is the second of my two Dawn Redwood trees that I grew from seed. Both of these, they were from a batch of 10 seeds, and I only had 2 that made it, this one and the other one, and I decided I was going to have a kind of race, and you can watch this in the playlist, between the 2 seedlings, and I was going to try keeping one in a small pot and seeing if I could grow something with some nice size and taper, and another one in a bigger pot, and this one's in a large pond basket, working like an air pot, and yes, and a big difference really. I put a bend in the top of this tree here, which brought this branch up as a leader, so I've got some really quite nice taper on this tree. I'm not going to repot it this year, but I am going to take out some of these strange branches that are just, well, have just been aiding trunk growth, but not really doing much in the way of making a nice tree. Starting at the bottom, I'm going to leave this branch as a sacrifice branch to continue thickening the base of the trunk here, but I'm going to just take off all these side branches like so, and hopefully that'll encourage this end to keep growing and drawing the energy, fattening that branch, fattening that trunk here. So this is my perceived front, and we have some branches sticking out of the front here which I don't want, so I'm going to remove those. Cold fingers. And this strange branch is doing this sort of curl match the top. I'm going to get rid of in favour of this one, which is more or less in the same plane. I'm going to leave this piece at the back, but just shorten it off like so. Shorten that one like so. I don't like this branch sticking out there, and this one is too big and too heavy really, so again I've got a thinner branch there. I'm going to take this whole big chunk off. I've got lots of buds popping all on the trunk, so that'll give me some options for later, hopefully. Okay, another piece coming out the front here and here, and then that brings us to the spot where I bent the tree, and And as I say, the tree was wired over. This was originally the apex, and that allowed this side branch to become a much more naturally looking side branch. That's quite a big wound, but that will be at the back of the tree, so that's okay. Okay, the wind's still getting stronger. I'm getting a bit cross with these weather forecasters, telling me it was going to get better after 1 o'clock. They fibbed. Okay, shorten these pieces, and I'm going to shorten the top, like so, and then that's pretty much it for this tree. Let me move you back. There we go. I'll give you a quick spin. And let that one take off. And this year I'm going to start forming some more branches, hopefully, and start making it a tree now that I've formed the trunk. So as I said, this was from a batch of seed in 2017. So they would have been sowed. I'm thinking I probably had the seed for Christmas or something in 2016 and sowed in 2017, as opposed to Christmas 2017, sowed 18. All I can tell you is my label says sown, just says 2017, not sown or otherwise, but I'm guessing that that's probably what I meant, and that label's now bust, toast. So if you look back in the playlist of these trees, you'll notice that this tree was only repotted last spring. And you've probably heard, if you're a longer term subscriber, and if you're not, please subscribe, that I often say don't repot every year, but this tree was planted low in the pot and is actually pushing itself by the roots out of the pot. So I think at the very least I'm going to pull it out of the pot and try and get rid of some of these weeds that are growing in it, and repot it a little bit lower in the pot. There we go. Now I'm going to go and give the pot a bit of a clean before I do anything else. Okay. So I'm sure most people would say if I said this pot was gleaming, it was a bit of an exaggeration, but it's cleaned it up quite nicely. And I've got the drainage screens back into place. And, well, yes, the tree had absolutely filled the pot with root and then some. So, yeah, all those things I said about not repotting every year, not true in this case. Maybe it won't need repotting next year, but certainly this year it's going to need it. This will take off some of this surface, some of this moss I really dislike. Use this little brush. It's just a nylon brush. Doesn't really damage the roots, but it does remove the moss from the middle. Sorry, I'm sure you've just got a shot of my elbow. Okay, that's better. This tree's got quite a nice radial root pattern. And now I'm just going to work away some of the base and see if I can just loosen some around the sides. Not going to be a huge drastic repot, and we'll see how it goes next year. I can't remember how much root it had when I put it in the pot, but we will see. snip off a little more. Okay. That should quite happily go back into that pot now. So I've got my bucket of mix. This is my normal mix, which I talk about in one of my Chinese elm videos, which I'll link in the description. But it's part cat litter, which is a brand specific called Kitty Friends, and obviously I'm not getting any kickbacks from them, but it is a good quality brand that doesn't turn to mush. It is this pinky stuff. It goes brown when it's wet, so it doesn't look too terrible. It will go through quite a number of thawing and freezing cycles without turning to powder and gumming up. And then it's a mixture of some potting compost, in this case just a soil-based Job is number 1 that I picked up from the garden centre, and some potting grit. So a layer in the bottom, and then we'll try the tree. Let's go back a little bit. It's not too bad. Quite happy with that. I'm going to add some controlled release plant food. Around the outside, which will be near the top of the pots. Now, I've said this before, that way when you wash through with the watering, fertilizer gets washed down to the bottom of the pot, whereas if you put it in the bottom of the pot, the fertilizer gets rinsed straight out of the hole in the bottom. It doesn't do your plants any good. Something else I meant to say, controlled release. If you've been around for a while, you'll know controlled release, I'm always saying this, only releases the fertilizer when conditions are right. So when the soil is at a temperature that the roots will be growing in and is advantageous to the tree. If it's too cold, doesn't matter how wet it gets, it doesn't release any food. So that makes it rather more useful than the continuous release, which you can also buy and which looks very similar. So a bit more of that, and I've still got a bit of a gap at the top of the pot. I'm fairly central, but I like that in this. I don't even know what shape this pot would be called. It's something like a fleur de lis, but it's not. If any of you know what it's called, an oval with angles, I guess you could call it. I'm going to put a bit more controlled release fertilizer before I put another layer of soil. Because I had that nice flat roundy pad with a flat base, there's none of that, having to get everything poked down with chopsticks. I can just use my fingers, make sure there's no air gaps. Trying not to hide those nice surface roots. That is one thing I didn't say about this cat litter combo. It is very dusty. I don't know if you saw that little puff of dust as I put the soil on then, but it is quite dusty, so you do need to rinse through really thoroughly, otherwise all that dust coagulates in the bottom of your pot and can block your drainage holes. So there we go. I'll just give it a good old-fashioned, what my father would have called a gardener's tap, just to really make sure everything's settled in the pot, and give it a drink, and we can look at the top. As you can see, it's very free draining, and doesn't say that horrible sort of pinky colour. But what's interesting is you can see which of your trees are dry quite simply because although they will grow some moss and some algae, the individual particles, when they dry out, will return back to that sort of pale pinky grey colour. Well, maybe not quite so much pinky grey, but you can tell the difference between a dry pot and a wet pot, or at least as far as the surface is concerned, quite easily. Okay, so let that drain for a second. Whilst that's drip drying, as it were, a future video in process. This is some dawn redwood cuttings taken from this very tree and the other tree possibly, taken from the two trees in this video, and I'm going to try and make them into a nice little forest planting, maybe a timey-wimey video for later in the year. But yeah, it's quite interesting that you can take cuttings even from a trees, you know, as old and as venerable as a dawn redwood. I think this is my preferred front. Marginally better than this. Also, the tree has a slight lean towards that direction, so making this a better front, I think. And I think it's time I started trying to grow that pyramidal dawn redwoody type shape. I'm going to remove this branch which is now poking out at the front, and along with those. And this seems a little low for a first branch. I'm thinking my final height will be somewhere around here. So, can you see that on the video? I'm going to chop it just above a pair of buds. There. Shorten that right back. Now I need to take out this piece that was allowed this piece to take over as the apex, and in fact I'm looking at it. Let's take the wire off. And now I think I had a different plan at the time. I think I'm going to remove this piece and have this as my apex. I think that'll give me a more interesting taper. There. Yeah. They told me the storms was nearly over. They're fibbing. Let's move that. Shorten those, like so. Where I've got two branches together, I'm gonna keep remove that. So, do I want that piece? No, I don't want that piece at all. Take out that side and shorten that, shorten that, shorten that, remove that. Okay, so let's just quickly deal with that apex. Suitable piece of wire to reuse. Yes, don't need much. Again, I'm going to take that section of trunk, bend it down like so, which pulls that branch up like so, and makes that into the apex. and then I'm going to shorten that to there. And then obviously that piece can be snipped off at a later date. Just to show you that a bit closer. Okay, so I'm just going to bend it a little more. Perfect. In fact, there's a bud just there that's likely to burst, and that will probably be my new apex. But I'll leave this on for security for now. We may have some more late stage frosts and things. Okay, so there we have it. First tree repot of the season, 2022. And I'm quite pleased with that. It's still got a ways to go, and this pot still seems a little big for it, but I'm hoping that it'll grow into it, as the old saying goes. Okay, so there we have a side-by-side comparison of the two trees, along with a drinks can for scale. My old drinks can that I've been using now for years has gone. Storm Eunice took it somewhere, next door's garden, 5 miles down the road, somewhere in between, who knows. But yeah, that's two trees, same batch of seeds, the one in a small bonsai pot, the one allowed a bit more free rein, and a bigger pot. It's a shame I didn't have a third one to grow in the ground, but I don't have a lot of room for growing in the ground. For another one, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Do the YouTube, like, subscribe, etc, etc, and don't forget to comment. Let me know what you think. But most of all, please do stay safe, everybody.